Hello everybody, and welcome to the fourth of the Landscape Builder tutorial videos for the new group system. In this video, I'll be showing you the zones feature of the group system. As before, I'm using a pre-release version of Landscape Builder, so you might see some changes in later versions. For these changes, you can consult the manual or post us a message on our Unity forum. Zones is a new feature in the group system that allows you to be a lot more specific about where objects are placed inside clearings. A zone is basically a circle or a rectangle that you can force objects to either always appear in or never appear in. You can also use it to control the placement of textures or grass, which we'll look at a bit later. To demonstrate how zones work, I've got a simple test group set up here. Let's go into the group designer. This is the easiest way to create and start using zones. As you can see here, I have a number of barrels here, spread evenly throughout my group. They are controlled by this group member here. Let's say I want to constrain all the barrels to appearing within a single area right in the middle. To do this, I could use a zone. Zones are created and modified at the group level in the Zones tab here. To create a new zone, I simply click the plus button. I can then use the minus or cross buttons to remove zones. So I now have a new zone. It is displayed in the group designer as this cyan circle here. Zone visibility can be turned on and off by selecting an object, right-clicking, going to the display menu, and clicking the zones button. Turning it on is via the same method. I can move it around with this handle here and adjust the position and radius using these values in the inspector here, so the sliders and the float fields. I can also change it to be a rectangle instead, where I can then instead specify the width and the length of the rectangle instead of using the radius. So I'll just move it, make it a bit bigger and move it over here. And I can also give it a name by typing it into this field here. So I'm just going to call this one new zone. Once I have my zone how I want it, I can then tell a member to use it for placement. To do this, I go into the member that I want, this barrel here, and then I go to this zones tab, which gets automatically selected if I create my first zone. So if I go into here, I can add a new zone filter by clicking the plus button. And we can see that my new zone I created just a moment ago has appeared. So notice now that also only these barrels only appear within the zone region now. The functionality of only allowing the objects to appear within the zone is how the OR mode works. I can also force the objects to not appear within the zones by selecting the not mode up here at the group level. See how the barrels now don't appear within that zone. I can of course have multiple zones as well, both at the group level and the member level. By clicking this plus button here at the group level in the zone tab, I can add more zones for use with that group. This is where naming your zones can come in handy for convenience, so you don't get confused between them. So I'm going to call this new one a circle zone, as it's going to be a circle. And now I can move it somewhere different again with the handles. So I can use this zone I just created in the barrel member as well now. So I can change the existing member zone to my circle zone I just created using the drop-down menu, which now forces the barrels to appear within the circle instead. And I can also add a second zone using the plus button and set it to my original zone as it is by default. So in this way you can combine the effects of multiple zones to get even more control over your object placement. As you can see, by default the barrels appear within the circle, but they're not allowed to appear within the rectangle. So it's combining the effects of both zones. Before we move on to texturing grass, I'll just make a clarification about the OR and NOT modes of zones. So OR is inclusive while NOT is exclusive. What I mean by this is that NOT zones always exclude objects from inside of them. You'll never get an object inside of a NOT zone. OR zones, however, are inclusive, meaning that not all objects have to be inside of them if they comply with other zone rules. For instance, If I turn this not zone here into an or zone and move it away and scale it down a bit, make it a bit smaller, and maybe I'll scale down this circle as well. You'll notice that the barrels appear in both zones at the same time, even though each individual barrel doesn't necessarily fulfill the requirements of both zones. Zones are also applicable to the placement of textures and grass in your clearings. Let's first have a look at textures, which is located in the text tab at the group level. If I click the plus button here, I can add a new texture. I can choose which texture it is via the drop-down menu here. The choice is between any of the textures I currently have on my terrain. I'm going to pick this dirt texture here. As this texture has apply to whole group enabled, this texture will be applied to the entirety of my clearing, as can be seen if I populate the groups now. There are a few variables that I can use to control how this texture is applied. Min blend distance up here allows you to control how the texture blends out towards the edges of the group. A value of 0 means no blending will be applied. A positive value means the texture will blend over that many meters outside the clearing, as shown here with the blend distance of positive 2. A negative value means the texture will blend over that many meters inside the clearing, as can be seen if I set it to negative 20 and then populate the groups. The strength variable changes the strength of the texture being applied, how much it overrides the previously applied textures in the landscape. Use noise allows you to add some noise to the texture being applied. When it is enabled, there is a noise tile size variable exposed, which allows you to control the size of the noisy patches. When I finish populating the groups, you'll see what I mean by the noise. Note the regions here where the original grassy texture shows through. If I disable apply to whole group here, new options relating to zones appear. First, there is edge blend distance. Similar to negative values for min blend distance above, this controls inward blending for textures appearing inside of zones. You can add zones in exactly the same way as you can in the Members tab. I'll go and add the rectangle zone we created earlier and populate the groups again. Now you can see that the texture only appears in the rectangular area defined by the zone. The corresponding system for grass works in a similar way to textures. You can access it by going to the Group Level Grass tab here. Everything is basically the same as the Text tab, except that instead of the strength variable, there are the min and max density variables, which set the minimum and maximum densities for grass in a patch. For instance, I could pick this dry medium plant grass, then set minimum density of 3 and maximum density of 5, disable apply to whole group, and then add the circle zone we created, and then click populate groups. And then we can see down here that this dry grass has been added to the circle area we defined before with the circle zone. That brings us to the conclusion of this video. We'll be releasing some more videos soon looking at other new features of the group system, so keep an eye out for them, and thank you for watching.